Carl Jung discovered a terrifying paradox about the nature of visibility. He found that the more a person strives to be seen by the collective, the more rapidly their true self begins to disintegrate into the background noise of the unconscious. Conversely, those who possess the strength to remain unseen, to exist without the validation of an audience, often hold the keys to a higher form of consciousness that the rest of society is too distracted to understand. If you have found your way here, it is likely because you are one of the ghosts. You are someone who exists in the modern world but refuses to participate in its loudest ritual. You have an account, perhaps you scroll, you watch, you observe, but you do not post. You do not curate a digital avatar for public consumption. In the eyes of the algorithm, you are dead. But in the eyes of analytical psychology, you are perhaps the only one who is truly alive. You might feel broken. You might feel a strange, lingering anxiety that you are falling behind, that by not broadcasting your life, you are somehow erasing it. This is not a social failure. This is a psychological symptom of what I call the silent observer protocol. You are not failing to engage. You are unconsciously protecting your psyche from a mass psychosis that Jung predicted over half a century ago. Jung warned that when the individual merges too completely with the persona, the mask we wear for society, the shadow, or the dark, repressed side of the personality grows denser and more dangerous. Today, that persona is no longer just a mask you wear at work. It is a permanent digital construct that demands to be fed with content, likes, and engagement 24 hours a day. By refusing to post, you are engaging in a radical act of autonomic individuation. However, this refusal comes at a steep neurological and emotional cost. Modern neuroscience tells us that the human brain is wired for connection through mirror neurons. When you see others receiving validation, your brain releases dopamine in anticipation of a similar reward. When you deny yourself that participation, you create a chemical void, a sense of isolation that triggers the anterior cingulate cortex, the same part of the brain that processes physical pain. You feel invisible because biologically your brain is warning you that you are being exiled from the tribe. But Jung would argue that this pain is not a punishment, it is an initiation. You are feeling the weight of the digital collective unconscious, a suffocating pressure to conform, and your refusal to submit is causing friction. You are suffering from static identity diffusion, the feeling that because your life is not documented, it is not becoming real. To understand this dynamic, we must look at a case study from Jung's private archives, a patient we shall call Elias. Elias was a wealthy merchant in Zurich who came to Jung complaining of a profound sense of hollowness despite his success. Elias was obsessed with his reputation in the city, meticulously managing how he was perceived by his peers, his family, and his competitors. He was the analog equivalent of a perfect influencer. He controlled every conversation, every appearance. Yet, Elias had a recurring nightmare where he walked into a room of mirrors, but the mirrors reflected no one. He was invisible to himself. Jung diagnosed him with a severe case of persona identification. Elias had spent so much energy polishing the mask that he had forgotten who was wearing it. He had sacrificed his soul for the sake of his image. Jung's treatment for Elias was radical. He instructed him to withdraw. He told him to stop attending the high society galas, to stop correcting rumors about himself, to let the city think what it wanted. Elias was terrified. He believed that if he stopped projecting his image, he would cease to exist. Jung explained that Elias was suffering from the reflection dependency loop. He needed external eyes to verify his internal existence. By removing the audience, Elias was forced to confront the terrifying reality of his own company. This is exactly what happens when you choose not to post. You are stripping away the mirrors. You are refusing to let the world tell you who you are, which forces you to do the heavy, terrifying work of defining yourself from within. Most people cannot handle this silence. They post because the silence of their own mind is too deafening to bear. They upload a photo of their coffee, their workout, or their partner not to share joy, but to soothe the anxiety of non-existence. They are seeking externalized ontology, proof of life through digital consensus. But you, the non-poster, you sit in the silence. You absorb the anxiety. This indicates that you possess a rare psychological constitution, but it also exposes you to the dangers of the shadow. Because you do not express yourself outwardly, your psychic energy turns inward. If this energy is not properly managed, it can become toxic. Jung categorized this inward-turning energy into specific archetypal patterns. If you do not post on social media, you likely fall into one of three hidden psychological categories. It is vital that you identify which one you are, because while one leads to enlightenment, the others lead to a dangerous state of dissociation. The first category is what I call the Hermetic Vault. This is the most common type among high-functioning introverts. You do not post because you view your experiences as a finite resource. Jung spoke often of libido, not in the sexual sense, but as psychic energy. For the Hermetic Vault type, the act of sharing a moment dissipates its power. You intuitively understand that as soon as you photograph a sunset and caption it for an audience, the numinous quality of that moment, the spiritual electricity, is drained. You are preserving the sacred interiority of your life. Neuroscientifically, you are protecting your dopamine baselines. While others are spiking their cortisol and dopamine in a frantic cycle of posting and checking, you are maintaining a steady state of neurochemical flow. However, the danger here is hoarding. Jung warned that energy must flow. If you keep everything locked in the vault, you risk becoming cynical, looking down on those who share as shallow while you wither in your own superior isolation. You become a dragon guarding gold that no one, not even you, can use. The second category is far darker. This is the shadow mirror effect. You do not post, not because you value privacy, but because you are paralyzed by a perfectionistic fear of judgment. You observe others with a critical eye, dissecting their captions, mocking their vulnerability, all while terrified that if you were to participate, you would be found wanting. Jung would say you are projecting your own inferiority onto the digital tribe. You are avoiding the fool archetype. You refuse to play because you are terrified of losing. This is not wisdom, this is neurosis. In the brain, this manifests as an overactive amygdala hijacking the prefrontal cortex. You are in a constant state of threat detection, viewing the social feed as a battlefield where the only winning move is not to play. But by not playing, you are letting the shadow grow in the basement of your psyche, feeding on envy and resentment. The third category is the rarest and most profound. This is what Jung might call the transpersona observer. You do not post because you have fundamentally detached your self-worth from the visible spectrum. You have developed selective empathic immunity. You see the game for what it is, a theater of projections, and you have simply walked out of the theater. You are not judging it, nor are you hiding from it. You are simply elsewhere. This state mimics the neurological patterns of deep meditators, where the default mode network, the part of the brain responsible for self-referential thoughts, quiets down. You are present in the real world to a degree that the digitally tethered cannot comprehend. But even this state carries a risk. Jung warned of inflation, a state where the ego puffs itself up, believing it has transcended humanity. If you are not careful, your silence can become a form of spiritual arrogance, a way of saying, "I am too real for your artificial world." To understand how to navigate these categories and truly harness the power of your silence, we must look deeper into the mechanism of the persona and how it has been weaponized by modern technology. Jung believed the persona was a necessary tool for social survival, a compromise between the individual and society. But he never anticipated a world where the persona could be detached from the body and live eternally in a server farm. When you do not post, you are committing a form of social heresy. You are disrupting the algorithmic feedback loop. The system wants to categorize you, to predict you, and by remaining silent, you become a chaotic variable, you become a ghost in the machine. But existing as a ghost imposes a unique psychological tax. Jung would argue that by refusing to participate in the ritual of posting, you are disrupting the balance of reciprocity that governs human tribes. You create what I call the asymmetric intimacy paradox. Through your screen, you consume the intimate details of others' lives, their births, their grieving, their breakfast choices, their political outrage. You know them. You hold their data in your mind, but they know nothing of you. This asymmetry creates a buildup of unresolved perceptive load. Your brain is processing thousands of social cues daily, but because you do not discharge this energy back into the network via posting, it stagnates. In alchemy, which Jung studied obsessively, this is akin to a vessel that takes in ingredients but never boils them down or pours them out. The vessel eventually cracks. This is why many who don't post feel a strange, creeping exhaustion. You are carrying the weight of 1,000 lives while refusing to let anyone help carry yours. You are suffering from vicarious cortisol poisoning. You feel the stress of the collective world, the wars, the arguments, the envy. But you have no outlet for the fight or flight response because you are merely a silent watcher. You are trapped in the bleachers while the gladiators tear each other apart below, and your body does not know the difference between watching the violence and being in it. So, how do you integrate this? How do you remain a non-poster without succumbing to the bitterness of the hermit or the anxiety of the shadow? Jung's answer lies in the concept of the mandala. During his most intense period of psychological turmoil, Jung did not publish his findings immediately. He did not seek validation from the medical community. Instead, he retreated to his study and painted mandalas, intricate, circular, geometric patterns that represented the wholeness of the self. He wrote The Red Book, a massive leather-bound volume of his hallucinations and dreams, written in calligraphy and illustrated with terrifying beauty. He worked on it for 16 years, and here is the key. He showed it to almost no one. This was not secrecy for secrecy's sake. This was analog anchoring. Jung understood that the psyche requires expression to remain healthy, but he also knew that broadcast is not the same as expression. When you post on social media, you are often performing performative catharsis. You are venting emotion to get a reaction, which cheapens the emotion. When you create in silence, you are engaging in alchemical sublimation. You are transforming the raw material of your life into gold, solely for the value of the gold itself. To survive as a non-poster in a hyper-connected world, you must adopt the architect's protocol. You must realize that your lack of posting is not an absence of activity. It is a conservation of energy for a higher purpose. You must redirect the dopamine seeking away from external validation and toward internal mastery. Modern neuroscience supports this. When you stop chasing the short-term dopamine hits of likes, you allow your brain's dopamine receptors to reset, making you capable of deeper, more sustained focus, a state known as flow. This is where the great work happens. You must become the keeper of the internal archive. Instead of curating a feed for strangers, curate your own mind. If you take a photo of a beautiful moment, keep it, print it, put it in a physical book. The act of keeping it private charges the memory with a specific psychic weight. It becomes a talisman. By refusing to dilute the moment with the gaze of the collective, you keep the mana, the spiritual power of the event intact. You are not hiding, you are incubating. We are currently witnessing a bifurcation of the human species, a psychological splitting that Jung foresaw in his writings on the coming New Age. On one side, we have Homo digitalis, beings whose entire sense of self is externalized, stored on servers, validated by algorithms, and susceptible to mass manipulation. Their connection to the collective unconscious is a direct, unfiltered pipe that floods their ego until they drown in the noise. They are the posted. On the other side, we have you, the observers, the silent. You are the evolutionary response to the noise. You are developing a cognitive Faraday cage. By keeping your life off the grid, you are preserving the sanctity of the individual soul against the tsunami of the mass mind. You are keeping the capacity for deep thought, for nuance, and for genuine unmediated connection alive. Do not mistake your silence for weakness. Do not mistake your lack of a personal brand for a lack of success. In a world of constant noise, silence is the ultimate status symbol. It signifies that you do not need them. It signifies that your reality is self-sustaining. You have achieved what Jung called the center. While the rim of the wheel spins violently, blurring faces, trends, and outrages into a meaningless grey smear, you stand at the hub, stationary, observant, and whole. Your burden is heavy because you must carry your own self-worth without the crutch of public applause. But the reward is a life that is truly, terrifyingly, and beautifully your own. You have stepped out of the hall of mirrors and into the open air. The air is cold, and there is no one there to take your picture. But for the first time, you can breathe. Walk the path of the ghost, protect the vault, and remember the most profound things in the universe, dark matter, the ocean floor, the subconscious mind, are never seen. They simply are. See you in the next dimension.